My overall take on it is that the younger generation, they like a polo shirt is really like workwear. And because you don't have a job yet and you haven't entered the job market,
Right.
you don't understand.
You're now listening to the thoughts and sounds of IC the God King. This is the IC Experience.
Okay, you ain't tell me you was doing that now. You ain't tell me you was doing that, bro. Nah, come
So I gotta
on,
pull
nah.
some shit out the bag.
Like,
Pull some shit out the bag.
I'm starting to feel ambush.
Nah, don't feel ambush, brother.
You know what I'm saying?
Don't feel ambush. All right, let's see. Oh, here we go. Yeah. All right. What's up, my guy? We done took a 2-week break, and we finally getting back to it.
That was a 1 week break.
Nah, remember we had Mother's Day,
Okay.
and then I went down to Florida.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? So it was 2 weeks.
Wow.
You know,
That went fast.
and the streets calling. You know, we being a lot of good feedback, and make sure we got our mics on this time. We got the mics on, and that mic's working.
Mic check.
Yes, sir.
Mic check.
And so we're gonna jump right into it.
Okay.
There was a internet clip, and I'm gonna post it for the viewers to see.
Mm-hmm.
And it was asking, what is the UNC essentials?
The UNC what?
Essentials.
UNC essentials.
Yeah.
Got it.
And then all the people was asking or saying what they think it took to make an UNC essential.
Mm-hmm.
And one thing me and you've been going back and forth about for a couple of years is polo shirts.
What's an UNC essential?
When they start wearing those glasses with the rectangle frames inside and shit.
Wait,
that's so
What's an UNC essential?
The full beard.
What's an UNC essential?
I think polos. Like, that's what my dad wears and, like, my uncles wear. Like, it just gives UNC.
What's an UNC essential?
Back pain.
What's an UNC essential?
The jeans, like, they got the straight jeans, but they, like, fold them. They fold it the opposite way, and they iron them, and they got that line right down the middle, like, freshly ironed. Who ironed their jeans, though? Let me know. It just gives uncle. No one irons their jeans, first of all.
What's the UNC essential?
If your hat is flipped and if you have a bandana, no. It just give uncle.
What's an UNC essential?
Those shoes that like go in between each toe. Ew, your toes do not need to be out like that.
What's an UNC essential?
A tracksuit with Ray-Bans glasses. Just because that's what my dad wears.
What's an UNC essential?
The Oakley, look, those wraparound sunglasses. Everybody I see like who's 50 years old on Facebook has those on in their profile picture and it's taken from like down here.
What's an UNC essential?
Bucket hat.
What's an UNC essential?
Smelling like marijuana and sick, because no one but old man.
Hey, what's an UNC essential?
The George, the high knee socks. It's just giving unk status. Once you see it, you be like, yeah.
What's an UNC essential?
Wife beater on, long shorts like down to their knees, and a polo. I don't know. I just feel like that's what uncles be wearing, especially at like the cookouts and stuff.
Okay.
Polo shirts.
Okay.
Not just necessarily Ralph Lauren polo shirts.
Like the polo you got on today.
Yeah, the polo shirt I got on today. And
okay.
And then they also mentioned bucket hats.
Okay.
You know,
okay.
And so you know, and us being from Florida, Ralph Lauren polos reign supreme.
Mm-hmm.
And me and you talk about that all the time. And today I kind of wanted to discuss why I think that is, and jump into it, you know. And then you had a lot of good points on why people perceive that to be an fit.
Right.
You know.
Right.
So before we jump in, what's your overall thoughts on that?
Yeah, my overall take on it is that the younger generation, they like a polo shirt is really like workwear, right? Mm-hmm. It's kind of like if you're not going to put on a suit and tie, but you still need to present professionally, a polo is a good option,
right?
It's actually one of the most popular,
right?
So you know,
because you talked about, when people go to work, they're going to either have on a polo style shirt or a button-up shirt with the logo of the company.
Right. Exactly. You know, so yeah, that's my take on the whole, you know, polo.
Right.
Being UNC wear.
Yeah.
You know, it's really like grown-up wear, and because you don't have a job yet and you haven't entered the job market,
right.
you know, you don't understand. But yeah, as these millennials get older, they'll come to appreciate a man in a polo shirt.
Right. And so, like I said earlier, we grew up in Florida, and to me, this is the timeline of how we got to the overall prep look.
Mm-hmm.
Because in the 80s, it was what's this shit called? Lacoste. I remember seeing Lacoste a lot. And then they had La Tigre. I don't know if you remember that one. The tiger.
No, you know, Flu was just telling he has a La Tigre jacket. I like the jacket, but I was like, what is that?
It was around during the time Lacoste was around.
Right.
But it just wasn't as popular as Lacoste.
But I do remember seeing the tiger. I didn't remember the brand, but I remember seeing the little tiger.
Yeah, so like it seemed like it was an animal play back then. Like, hey, we got a tiger, we got a croc. Yeah. And so exactly right. So then by the time I got to middle school and I started paying attention about what people was wearing, duck head was a thing. So I remember there was a duck head season. And Duckhead had t-shirts though. I remember people had Duckhead t-shirts.
Right.
And then they also had the polos style shirts too. And then from Duckhead to polo, then it went to Tommy. And then I don't remember if Nautica came in before Tommy or during the same time, the same wave. I feel like it was all together. You remember? Because like I remember it went.
No, Nautica and Tommy was they
came in the same time.
Yeah, it was more like that was like the movement of like the boat wear type. Yeah,
right. And so from there, I remember in the late 90s, there was rumbles of the owners of these companies saying, we don't want black people wearing our clothes. Now, with that being said, black people or urban wear wasn't popular then. I do remember cross colors, but you either had to be in New York.
Cross colors,
yeah, you had to be in New York to get the shit. You know what I'm saying?
Like, you have to be in New York.
Shit. I mean, it wasn't accessible, basically.
I mean, it wasn't. Where you was at, it wasn't accessible, and you
had a store in Orlando. You could just pull up in the 1998 to go get some
cross colors of Carlton. Yeah. I can't remember the exact time frame, but I do remember as a kid going to.
When did Men's Closet open up? Y'all let me know, because I remember everybody down there. Y'all was going to Men's Closet.
Men's Closet been open forever,
but
I don't know.
Middle school? Were you going to Men's Closet in middle school?
Yeah.
Okay. Well, maybe they had it, but I would say it wasn't accessible.
I think I was. I don't know.
I remember y'all talking about it in high school for sure. That's when I got introduced to it.
Yeah, I really couldn't tell you if they was around in middle school.
I know in Tallahassee we ain't had nothing. I had to go out of town to get shit. You know what I'm saying?
But that's what I'm saying. It was accessible. You just had to travel to go get it. But it wasn't like New York was the only place that had it.
I mean, but if you went to
probably
New York,
in a certain time frame,
they had the most variety.
Oh yeah, most definitely.
So they was like reigning supreme.
Oh yeah.
You know, which we'll talk on this later. While a lot of New York niggas was walking around cocky in the 90s, because they was like they had all the fashion right there for them.
Fashion and music.
Yeah. So when the push of the white established brands, like you said, the boatwear, the Tommys, Duckhead, I just remember Tommy Hilfiger coming out more and saying, we don't want quote unquote black people wearing our shit. And when he did that, there was a pushback from the black community or the urban or hip hop community. And then that was the birth of like the explosion of urban wear. Urban wear. Like you said, we already had cross color and Karl Kani. But then after that, it was like FUBU came out. And when FUBU came out, they kind of, based off my experience, I remember FUBU being a bigger brand than cross colors Karl Kani.
Right.
And then shortly after that was Sean John. Then you had Fat Farm. Then you had a slew of places.
Echo Unlimited, Mecca, Dada Supreme.
Right. And so then the culture kind of went away from the prep look and they embraced, oh, this is the hip hop look now. And so we stayed in that era for probably like 10 years. We're wearing like black owned clothes.
Okay.
Yeah, like from like 2000 for sure, probably like 2010. Now, the reason this is important is because after that, when like Cash Money, No Limit, they was wearing Italian designers, and they elevated the game.
Who was wearing the Italian designer?
Like they was the ones I was seeing like. No, well, not that. You know what? I thought that was a black thing, but it wasn't. I don't think. But I'm talking about Gucci. They was like the rappers were introducing me to Versace, like Puffy and them.
Okay.
And then so it was like the everyday person can wear Polo, Nautica, Duckhead. Then when it moved over to urban hip hop, where you could go buy that too if you had access to it. But then when it got, hey, the new standard is now, do you have Gucci, Versace, you know, Dior, all that kind of stuff. Now again, I remember listening to New York rap, and they would be mentioning those brands in the early 90s. And I didn't understand the gravity of how important those designers were. Like Dapper Dan, his whole thing was taking those cloths from those Italian.
But how does this relate back to that like it being Unk wear? Like,
because so the reason it come back to being Unk wear, because once it elevated to the designer clothing, a lot of everyday people couldn't afford that. But where they came from, the 90s, going into the 2000s, and especially in Florida, you could always fall back on Polo.